Hello, I'm Craig Rowland, and in this screencast, I'll be talking about some basic principles of curriculum. Let's start with the word curriculum and what it means. Curriculum comes from the Latin root currere, meaning race course or the course to be run. This explains why in schools, curriculum is often seen as the ground covered by students in their race towards the finish line, which might be the end of the school year or graduation. Teachers who think of curriculum as a race to the end of the year typically use phrases like, this week we will cover, or we covered that last week. The problem is, covering something doesn't always mean your students understand it. And we have to decide as teachers if we want to simply cover the material or if we want to teach for understanding. We could also think of curriculum as what schools teach, or all the experiences the child has in school. Or we can think of curriculum as a field of study. Another popular way of thinking about curriculum is to see it as a plan, and particularly a written plan that guides our instructional decisions. For many teachers, though, the curriculum is very fluid and flexible and hard to put into words. It changes from class to class, day to day, based upon conditions on the ground, to use an army metaphor. If we asked some teachers to see their curriculum or to write it down, we would probably get something like this. When we talk about planning a curriculum, there are four key questions to consider. These come from Ralph Tyler, one of the first educational theorists in this country, to give serious thought to curriculum planning. The first question is, what educational purposes should the program or curriculum seek to attain? The second question is, what educational experiences can we provide that are likely to attain or achieve these purposes? The third question is, how can we effectively organize these educational experiences? And the fourth question is, how can we determine whether our purposes have been attained? This fourth question has taken on increasing importance in the past decade as taxpayers and lawmakers are demanding that schools be held accountable for what and how well they teach our children. Here's a slightly different way to think about curriculum as being divided into intent, content, organization, and administration. Statements of intent address the question, what are the desired outcomes of the art curriculum? These statements can be further divided into aims, goals, and objectives. Aims address expected life outcomes of an art program. Typically, when we look at state learning standards, for example, in Florida, we call them the Sunshine Standards. We're looking at aims or expected life outcomes. Goals, on the other hand, describe more immediate outcomes of an art program, typically, for example, at the end of a grade level or unit. An example of a goal might be students are able to use color to create different effects in a painting. And then a third area of intent or statements of intent would be objectives. And these describe more immediate outcomes of an art lesson. For example, students will be able to compare and contrast two works of art. Good objectives are written from the student's perspective and include action verbs that are observable. When thinking about the intent of a curriculum, it's important to keep in mind or consider that your aims should correspond to your goals and your goals should correspond to your objectives. Okay, let's look at a second area of the curriculum, or content. Content is determined from statements of subject matter, learning experiences, media, and vocabulary. Or put another way, content refers to the stuff that we want students to sink their teeth into every day. The primary standard for judging whether an experience that we provide or the content we've chosen is worth offering or teaching is how well it contributes to achieving your curriculum aims, goals, and objectives. The next area we need to consider when planning a curriculum is organization, or how we choose to structure and present the content to students. There are two different ways of thinking about the organization of a curriculum. One is its horizontal structure, and the other one is its vertical structure. When we're talking about horizontal structure, we're talking about the relationship between all the subjects students study each day. For example, when we talk about an integrated curriculum, we're talking about its horizontal structure. The other area here is vertical structure, or the relationship between what students previously studied, what they're studying now, and what they'll study in the future. Excuse me. So in a high school art curriculum, for example, when we have Art 1, Art 2, and Art 3 classes, we're talking about the vertical structure of a curriculum. Sometimes we use the term scope and sequence when we refer to the horizontal and vertical structure of a curriculum. And that refers to how wide of a net will you cast across the field of art when you plan your curriculum, and then how will you organize and sequence what you teach your students. An example of sequencing in art is to teach the design elements and principles one at a time: line, shape, color, texture, and so on, which is frequently how it's taught in schools. Something important to consider here when regarding scope and sequence is the challenge of breadth and depth. How wide a net you cast when planning your curriculum limits how deep you can go when studying any one topic. So there's always a trade-off here. The fourth area we need to consider when planning an art curriculum is administration, or how the curriculum is managed. Here we would look at whether students come to the art teacher or does she go to them, a la Art on the Cart. What's the budget of the art curriculum? How many minutes are art classes in the school day? How often do art classes meet each week? Are students grouped? Are there majors or minors? These are all important questions to consider when planning a curriculum. So let's review real quick. Overall, there are 4 areas to consider when planning a curriculum: intent, content, organization, and administration. And that's all for now. Thanks for listening.